Speaking as a married man myself, I feel like I have some authority in saying that all the stress, drama and tears people say comes with wedding planning, it's tosh. Bunk 'em, if you will. I mean, yes, as soon as you start inviting people, they suddenly become pickier than Peter Piper playing Scoville. And yes, you go through so many colour schemes that you begin to forget what colour even is, and your vision's suddenly overtaken completely by some sort of shade of something you can't even describe. But at least you're not getting married in Renaissance Genoa, where you might not be getting married for love, but for money or power. If somebody doesn't like the look of your bride, they might just poison her at a champagne breakfast, and it just makes you want to throw your ring away like that. Today we're looking at Brides and Bribes. I think that's the best we're going to get. I can't actually chuck it without looking genuinely concerned. Brides and Bribes has 3 to 5 players guiding their family members around Renaissance Genoa, forcing them to marry beautiful women they may not be overly fond of in a bid to become the new Doge. Much meme, very mispronunciation, such trash. I don't have a box to tap this time around because this is a Kickstarter review. Don't judge anything you see by how it looks here. In fact, just jump straight over to the Kickstarter now, as they've already done everything up art-wise and it looks 10 times glossier than what you'll see here. This absolutely huge map will also be done away with and replaced with an equally huge high-quality board, which I like the sound of it, but I don't know, I like playing on this. I found it quite therapeutic. It was like being a kid again, playing with those carpets that were the layout of a city, and you'd drive your car there. Don't change it on my behalf, I'm just looking back on happier times in my life. Each player gets a family of loyal characters to dot around town represented by these tiles. On their turn, they may take 2 actions. In order to obtain everything or everyone you need for victory, you're going to be dabbling in worker placement, or in this case, tile placement, as a means of fighting over who gets to marry what. Who? A player can place a tile in a borough, lining themselves up for democratic battle. They can reinforce their tile in an area by placing an additional tile underneath any they have there. They can send a tile off to distant colonies to nab resources swiftly with barely any conflict, or they can simply discard one to attain the Doge's favour, to move themselves up the favour track to make it easier to win ties. Players place tiles until everyone's passed, and that usually happens when everyone's out on the streets doing something important. After this, you resolve everything that happens. Those that went off to distant colonies grab the workers that they were promised. But if you placed anyone out on the streets of Genoa, then things start to get a little stabbish in the backish. As each borough of Genoa is resolved, players who place tiles down get to engage in some rather shoddy affairs. They could simply take an action of gathering a worker relevant to that district, a coin for spendings, a worker for workings, or an intrigue point off the bat for winnings, or bring on a commoner, storing them for use for later. These are pretty boring actions. I mean, yeah, you're going to get an odd coin or an intrigue point, which is integral to winning the game, but well, you're not going to be hurting anyone's feelings, and if you want the big points, you're gonna have to do that by squabbling like petty children over pretty ladies. As each borough is resolved, players may have 1 or more tiles to pick from. These are potentially eligible bachelors, crafty commoners, or just standard objects. Each player picks one of these tiles to guide them around the borough. If they have reinforced these tiles with others, then the other members of the party enter the player's hand. Chances are, if you built a small army in a borough, then you're jostling over who gets to marry one of the wonderful bachelorettes that the lord of the borough is offering. Displaying. What a horrible time to be alive. Each eligible bachelor has a prestige and charm value. If the prestige value matches that of the lord of the borough, or if not, you can always just pay all the way there and influence points to hit that value, then you're noble enough to marry, as long as your guide's charm is as high as one of the 2 brides on offer. But then again, you could just bribe your way there with the value of lovely coin, because money is a great substitute for personality. I should know, I have neither. Marrying is the best way to gain huge clumps of influence points integral to winning the game, but it's also the most complex thanks to your supposed friends turned wedding crashers. After declaring an action, other players can take their hand of reinforcements, each equipped with a different ability. In clockwise order, players can declare that they're going to scupper the active player's action by playing a tile with an action that can really screw them over. The active player can counterattack as long as they've got a decent set of tiles in their hand, but may be left unable to fulfill the action they wanted to perform, or may have to lower their expectations on the bride they wish to marry. Having a mysterious wing of wicked wingmen by your side arguably becomes Brides and Bribes' most interesting mechanic. If you jump into a borough too naive, you will be taken advantage of. Other players will cripple your funds, they'll inject the plague into your suitor's charm organs in order to make them look less desirable to a bride, or they might even just poison a bride at a champagne breakfast. It really does become a little bit macabre, but is also a fair bit funnier when you include object tiles into proceedings. At the end of a round, players can take any meeple workers they've collected and sacrifice them to build a workshop. Okay, I'm being a bit dramatic there, that's not the terminology used, but you do get rid of workers to build a workshop, so it could be interpreted as a bit dark. Doing this gets them a healthy dose of intrigue points, but also gets them an item that does lovely things if you reinforce a human being with them. Thing is, they're played like regular tiles, and they even look exactly the same on the back, so they can be reused to reinforce a suitor's potential charm value, or maybe even provide an antidote to a poor character that's been poisoned. They could also be used to trick other players into thinking that you're going to make a move on a Brides Bride, when in actual fact all you've gone and done is put a wine jug down in disguise. Thematically, it's bizarre to think about, but mechanically it's really interesting. You could stack up a bunch of tiles that are effectively just inanimate objects, tricking people into reinforcing everyone over here, whereas actually just around the corner you've got a bunch of suitors from your own family queuing up to take the first bride. It's really quite interesting, if a bit silly. Brides and Bribes combines traditional Euro stylings with worker placement and bluffing to form a game that is filled with dubious dealings and gambles that are just as risky for defending players as it is for attacking. Do you take an opportunity to marry, or do you stab someone in the back over someone else who is probably also taking advantage of that fact? Do you focus more on hiring a bunch of commoners to unleash in later rounds, or do you attempt to spread who you have thinly across the board, hoping you've got a good enough read on the other players to ensure you have a solid start on matrimony? Simply having a worker placement game where you place your workers face down adds this wonderful layer of bewilderment, drama and stress that you wish were aspects of every vanilla wedding that you're ever forced to attend. However, your first playthrough may not be as fun as I'm advertising. I've pretty much provided cliff notes on all the rules here. There's an awful lot of information for you to take in, even when nothing has been revealed. There's almost a library of icons that you have to learn, some clear, some a little dubious, and others looking awfully similar to other abilities that do completely different things. It takes a while to figure out exactly what abilities do what, or more so, what abilities work well with other abilities in what scenarios. And when you combine that information of what you already have in your hand with the abilities of those you can hire on board for later rounds, and exactly how that's going to work in the grand scheme of things over the next 6 rounds, it's just, your brain becomes a jumble of arrows and colours and flags and coins the first time you play it. The likelihood is, your first game, you're going to have some really poorly planned actions, and as such, as you're trying to stab someone in the back, you're likely just dagger yourself in your own ear, and you're not entirely sure how that happened. Now, take what I just said with a pinch of salt. The publishers have stated they're working on simplifying the rulebook so it's easier to get the hang of when it gets into your hands. I'll include a link in the description so that you can see how work on that is going on. They've also said they're willing to do the same for the symbols on the ability cards, and I have no doubt they're going to do it, seeing as within a week of getting this, the Kickstarter already showed that they'd improved the art style tenfold, so I have no doubt they'll get to that. So, is it a game for you? Brides and Bribes is a great amalgamation of worker placement and bluffing game. It takes the main principles of each genre and uses them very, very well. However, if you're not a fan of either one of those genres, I don't think this marriage of awesome will convert you. If you're not a fan of bluffing games, you probably see the snappy take that combat tile mechanic thing as nothing more than schoolboy taunting. Oh, well, I want to marry her. Oh, but I want to marry her. Oh, but I'm more charming. Oh, well, I'll poison her. None of us can have her, okay? It's just going to really annoy you if you're not into that sort of thing. And if you don't like worker placement games, you might actually get a lot from the complexity that comes from the abilities that come from all the tiles. But will you have the patience to sit through a bevy of rules and explanations in order to really get the most out of this? Probably not. However, if we really analyse that sentence, it basically translates to my biggest flaw with the game being it hones in on its main mechanics too well. And what sort of complaint is that? Personally, for me, on the Snog, Marry, Avoid scale of rating a game, Brides and Bribes is firmly in the Snog category. I'm not going to get into too much more detail about that. It gets a bit awkward. However, if you're looking for an edgier worker placement game that's full of drama and bluffing and deceit and basically almost drowning in theme, then Brides and Bribes is certainly a game you'll want to commit to. Just make sure there's no one in your regular play group who's going to get a bit finicky about it and just going to want to take jewellery off and throw it across the room.